Making his case for an ISIS strategy in prime time, addressing the nation.
I've made it clear that we will hunt down terrorists who threaten our country wherever they are. That means I will not hesitate to take action against ISIL in Syria as well as Iraq. This is a core principle of my presidency. If you threaten America, you will find no safe haven.
Today he's heading to the Hill to meet with members of the Senate. Joining us now, Senator Ron Johnson and Senator Ben Cardin, both members of the Foreign Relations Committee. Let me start with you, Senator Johnson. Your sense here in terms of just reaction, is this enough? And we've been talking a lot about whether the idea of not having any ground troops, how successful can this be?
Good morning. Listen, I agree with the President. At the tail end of his speech, he said, our own safety, our own security depends on our willingness to do what it takes to defend this nation. But by taking off ground troops, basically what he's saying is we'll do what it takes up to a point. And I just think that's a blunder. I don't think that's how you assemble a coalition. That's not showing the 100% commitment that I think the President of the United States must show to America, to our allies, and quite honestly, to our enemy, that we are going to destroy ISIS. You know, right now it looks to me pretty much a strategy of degrading, which we must do first, and one of containment, and I don't think ISIS can be contained.
Well, Senator Cardin, A, do you agree with that? And if you do you still go through with the airstrikes if you don't think you can actually get to the other side on true success, whatever that means?
Well, I think there is broad consensus that we got to take action against this barbaric terrorist group known as ISIL, and that with the President suggesting in the use of our air power has support. I think there's many of us that are very cautious as to giving an unlimited campaign, as we saw what happened in Iraq, and that military alone will not end ISIS. What we need to do is use the cutting off their financial support, cutting off their political support, working with the moderate Arab states. That is extremely important. We need the international resolve. So I thought the President set the right parameters for our engagement, but I think there's a lot of us in Congress that are going to be very concerned about any open-ended commitments.
Senator Cardin, is this a real war or is this a political war? Is this an optics war for a country that's upset but not upset enough to go all the way?
We can get into the semantics as to whether it's a war or not. There's a specific law in the books known as the War Powers Act that Congress passed, and certain constitutional responsibilities of the Congress. And if the President has engagement over a period of time, he needs and should get the authorization of Congress.
Senator Johnson, do you think that there is the political will in this country to put ground troops en masse and get them involved?
The only way you're going to get that political will is if the President leads. If the President shows exactly why ISIS represents a threat to America, and if the President just goes on TV one time and quite honestly contradicts his own goal statement there in terms of are we going to really destroy ISIS or are we going to contain them, you're not going to have the American support. And so I think it's a real danger. And guys, you have to understand the reality of the situation. We had more than 130,000 troops. We surged more than 160,000 troops to defeat 6,000 to 8,000 al-Qaeda in Iraq. Okay, now we've got probably at least 15,000, and that number will probably grow because they're being very effective recruiting ISIS. They're better resourced, they're better equipped, they're better trained, they're a far more effective military force, and we're going to supposedly destroy this ISIS force with 1,500 American military personnel. I just don't think that's being honest with the American public, that the goal is destruction. I think right now the goal is trying to manage, contain, and I think it's more of a political war, getting back to your point, Andrew.
Hey, Senator Johnson, if you call someone a reluctant war president, that's not a bad thing, I don't think, obviously. And it's not a pejorative to say that. That should always go along with war, reluctant. But
precisely.
My question is, the president has been aggressive with drones. I mean, you cannot fault his right. what he's done with al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. I'm just wondering whether this guy, President Obama, could surprise people like you in this context, and if it did. In your view, if it came down to where it was a clear and present danger to the United States and it would require ground troops, do you think that the president could make that decision at the right time? Because, that's where a president really, I've given up on the private sector. I don't think he's never going to be what I want him to be on the private sector. But I think it's possible that he could do it in this case. No?
Well, listen, I think every American wants a president to be appropriately cautious when committing the finest among us to war. But if you're going to do that, you have to be committed to victory. You have to commit to the goal.
Is it impossible for him to do that? Do you think that he couldn't do that? In this case, it's very clear what's best for the United States. If it became clear that that would be necessary to protect the United States.
I certainly hope this president has it in him to do that. He says he does, and he certainly demonstrated, like you say, the drone strikes. But the analogy I'm using is if you have a hornet's nest in your backyard, there's a danger to your kids. You're going to go out there and destroy it, or are you going to poke it with a stick for 3 years? I don't think you want to poke this hornet's nest with a stick for 3 years because it does represent a real threat to America. They've made their intentions very clear, establish this Islamic State and use it as a base to attack the modern world, the West, America. That's a threat. I think they need to be destroyed.
Senator Cardin, is there any time you would use ground troops? Under what circumstance?
Let us remember, this is the 13th anniversary of the attack on our country. Let us remember that in 2002 and 3, we were going to go into Iraq and we were going to do it and get it done, and that's using the force of American ground troops, and it would be a very short campaign. It didn't work that way. So let's be very cautious.
Well, is that
on the use of our,
Is that a no under no circumstances?
No, if we have a legitimate risk that we need to use our military, I'll support that. But I'm not going to support an open-ended use of American forces we did in Iraq. I opposed Iraq. I think I was right to oppose us going into Iraq. There was no real al-Qaeda force there before we got there, and there's still a problem today.
Maybe this is, if you got a land the size of Maryland and an infrastructure and well-funded, I mean, this is the enemy maybe we were looking for, that you didn't think was there last time. There they are. They're right there, and they're clear and present. Maybe you were right to oppose the Iraq War. Maybe this is that was a bad experience that is not allowing you to do what's right in this case.
No question about the fact that ISIL is a barbaric terrorist organization, and it requires international response and U.S. leadership, and I support that. What I suggest, though, is be cautious on what you believe you can do by the use of our ground forces.
Joe, real quick, our defenses are better than they were in 2011, but the threat is greater. We are not safer. I do not agree with the president when he says we are safer. We are not.
Okay. We're going to leave the conversation there. Senators Johnson and Cardin, we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.